So much of storytelling, so much of branding and marketing is actually about what you do not say and what you do not show and what you omit, what you leave out of the story. It's actually as important, if not more important, than what you do include. The reason is because the human mind is really good at filling in the blanks with imagination. And that's why when you go to a restaurant and they serve you a dish and you look at it and it's pretty and it's very well, put together, you're not looking at the animal that's being slaughtered and their insides are being gouged and the blood that goes everywhere. And you're not looking at the chef's sweat that's going into your dish, and you're not looking at the rats and the cockroaches that are in the back, no matter how clean the restaurant is. You're not looking at all the other parts of the story, even if, in fact, forget about the disgusting parts. Even, let's just talk about the process, right? Of the planting of the seeds of the plants that will then turn into the ingredients and all of that. Sure, they might include that in the storytelling, but it's always handpicked to enhance the story, not to tell you everything. And that's where the saying of leaving something to the imagination comes from. That's why it's so important, when it comes to creating, for example, sex appeal for certain characters, that so much is left to the imagination, because if you show everything and you tell everything, there's really nothing there for the person. But we like mystery and we like incomplete stories and we like to fill in the blanks, like I said, when we don't know what happened, so we fill it with whatever we think fits based on what we see. And so we are at the restaurant and the plate looks luxurious and the food looks good and the light looks good and everything looks good, and then you assume that the rest of the story is a story of calm and zen and beauty and abundance and flow and all the good things, when in reality there is so much there that's just not what you think it is, but it's part of the story. It isn't lying, by the way. We have to be very clear about this. So much of life is about storytelling. In fact, storytelling is what makes us human. What is life if we don't tell stories and we don't assign meaning to things? I'll give you an example. If, let's say, we are working together, right? And you asked me about my work experience. And I told you that I had, I do have about 14 years or so of marketing experience, consulting for the past 8 or 9 years. I worked with lots of multi-million-dollar brands, and I worked with startups, and I worked with high-growth brands. I worked with C-suite executives. I have a lot of experience with online businesses in particular. I built my own businesses in the past too before I became a marketer. All of this is relevant to you, right? You, the people that I'm creating this content for. But imagine if I started telling you about every single role I had that had nothing to do with this. I mean, there was a time in my life when, out of need, I had to make bagels and coffee, in university. And there was a time in my life where I briefly worked with a bank for a few months, worst time of my life ever, also more than a decade ago. And there's just so much about my life that's irrelevant to the story, and so suddenly I start telling you details that have nothing to do with that, and all of a sudden the story is not as impactful, right? All of a sudden you're lost. And so if I leave these stories out, it's not because I'm lying to you, it's because they're not relevant to the story that's required for you. So, I used the example earlier of a restaurant having rats and cockroaches and stuff. Obviously, we don't want that. You definitely don't want to have that kind of thing in the back of your mind. But there's nothing wrong with omitting details that are irrelevant. In fact, you must leave them out, because these irrelevant details are only going to distract from the main story. So, to recap, rely on the human mind to fill in the blanks with imagination. All you have to do is supply the few pieces of evidence that are real, that are true, that support the story you want to create, and then let people complete the story on their own. You don't have to spell out the entire story. You could just tell them just enough and let them participate in the creation of that story. At the end of the day, you may own your business, but you don't own the brand. I know this is difficult to understand and accept, but the brand is not owned by anyone. The brand is made for people, by people, and it's alive. It's a living entity. It's a living force by itself. Nobody owns the brand. It's a life of its own. All right, thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.